When did you genuinely think you were going to die? What happened instead? Fell off a 70-foot cliff. As I was tumbling down, a voice inside my head said you are going to die, and I accepted that. Time seemed to slow down and it was very peaceful. Then I hit the bottom and everything hurt and I had a broken back and wrist. I'm okay now though. Your acceptance and the peaceful feeling are probably what saved you. You are more likely to survive falls when relaxed. This is why a lot of drunk people fall off of balconies without a scratch. I was parasailing with a group of random individuals and the guy driving the speedboat slowly came to a stop. He started yelling. We ran out of gas. My first thought was that once I hit the water, this parachute was going to drag me down. I started unbuckling my harnesses. The guy kept yelling we ran out of gas, and I'm thinking, yeah, I get it. I'm working on not drowning. I get through about 2 buckles when he starts back up. Later I found out it was a prank, and they all thought I was daft for not responding when all I was really concerned with was survival. It's just a prank. Bro is utter bulls at times. Lyme disease. Started out thinking I was having a panic attack. Then my heart started palpitating. Then I started to run sweat. And my brain started to fog badly. Can't describe it much better than that. Thought I was having a heart attack or something. Ended up losing 15 pounds in 3 days from sweating. Sleeping 20 hours a day. After 13 weeks on 2x100mg doxycycline and 3 months to recover. I'm like 95% normal again. I do not recommend Lyme disease as something to try. I do not recommend Lyme disease as something to try. Sci-Fine puts down tweezer holding the tick. I was skiing at a resort and went out of the gates that said you may die. I have plenty of backcountry experience and knew what I was doing. Problem was it was a complete whiteout on this peak and I got disoriented along with my 2 friends. We ended up dropping on the backside of the mountain instead of dropping back to the resort. We didn't get out till 10 PM. We had to hike up a mountain to get out and get cell service for help. The snow was so deep we couldn't touch hard pack snow with 180 centimeters ski. I had intense hypothermia, and both friends got frostbite pretty good. We actually thought we weren't going to make it and made a death video that I still have to this day. My grandma was driving me to the train station a rainy evening on a winding road with 1 lane in each direction. Suddenly a large truck coming in the opposite direction has its trailer skid, going 90 degrees on the front part of the truck and filling our whole lane with a massive vehicle approaching at a combined speed of more than 100 miles per hour. I just had time to think. So this is how I die before my grand somehow took our little car into the ditch and up on the road again, at full speed, completely bypassing the oncoming wall of death. Mind you, this is Norway. The ditch was deep and loose, full of rocks and wet soil, with trees and boulders everywhere. That took a reaction time and wheel control worthy of a world-class rally driver. I was just sitting wide-eyed and dumbstruck in the passenger seat staring at my 78-year-old granny. When I finally came to my senses enough to stutter a "How the frick did you do that?" she just shrugged a matter of fact "Had to go round, you see, or else we'd be squashed," and never spoke of it again. To this day I have literally no idea how she managed that, and I never use "you drive like my grandma" as an insult. Indeed, few are worthy of that compliment. Norway. She's got WRC in her blood. As a young teenager in the late 80s, a friend and I were curious as to what would happen if you inhaled the gas used for Bunsen burners at school. I think it was butane, which can be fatal. Please, no one try to recreate this. Anyway, I started and took a couple of large breaths in. Started to feel lightheaded, then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" I'm feeling good, lightheaded and smiling. I go to reply to him, but just as I'm about to, I hear a small tick sound, like a clock, and everything seemed to change very slightly. I'm confused for a second, then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" I didn't answer him from the first time obviously, so I go to answer him and then click. Everything changes again, only now I recognize it. It's like my head twitched back into a position it was in 3 seconds ago. I'm sitting there puzzled, then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" Yes, I try immediately shouting, but nothing comes out. I try to make a fist and stamp my feet, but I'm paralyzed. Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" I'm now trying to shake my whole body, screaming, What the frick is going on? I try to stand, then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" Frick, back again, what else to try? I try answering, no, as this was now the case, but nothing comes out. Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay? Is this a joke? How? Why? It can't be. What?" Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" Silence. Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" Silence. Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" Silence. Then my friend looks over to me and says, "Are you okay?" I've given up. I sit there silently waiting for the question again, but this time by even 0.2 of a second longer than before. I know it's different. I look up and say, "Yes." He smiles back and grabs the rubber tube for a turn. I put my hand out to stop him. Apparently no time passed from him asking the question and me replying, and he only asked once. Frick knows what happened. I'm fine now though. Fell backwards down my grandpa's home elevator shaft. For a split second I thought for some reason the elevator wasn't there, and that I was about to fall all the way down and land on my back head on concrete. Wound up falling like 3 feet and landing on top of the elevator. There was a shooting at my high school. Not much we could do except for go into lockdown and wait for the police to show up. An awful 4 hours in a corner of a dark room while we can hear crap going on just down the hall. I was scuba diving off the coast of Florida. I was in roughly 60-70 feet of water when I got an insane migraine. I had never had a migraine before, and haven't had one since. I couldn't see straight. My head felt like it was about to explode and I knew that I was about to throw up. But there was a problem. I was underwater. My body sensed that something was wrong when I was unresponsive and just floating along upside down. So, he grabbed me and slowly ascended. We had to stop to decompress so we didn't get the bends, and as we were sitting at roughly 15 feet I started throwing up. So here I am puking through my regulator and trying to breathe while essentially feeling like I was being spun around and hit in the head by Mike Tyson. After what felt like an hour, we finally hit the surface. Once we weren't underwater, I spit the regulator out of my mouth and continued to empty my stomach. My buddy inflated my vest so I could just float on the surface and not have to swim. He swam, dragging me behind him, a few hundred yards to the shore. I laid on the shore for the next 45 minutes in full gear waiting for my head to recover and occasionally ralphing onto the beach next to me. And that, ladies and gents, is why you always dive with a buddy. TLDR. Got a migraine underwater. Good thing I dive with a buddy. I know it should be a given that a diving buddy does this kind of thing for you, but you have a good friend. I was bouldering, climbing without ropes, at Horse Pens 40 in Alabama. I was about 20 feet up and I'm almost to the top and there's no holds left to get over the top. I stand there for a minute or so and I'm feeling around for a good hold and can't find anything. Then one of my legs starts to shake uncontrollably and I start to panic. One of my friends was going up a different route and saw what was going on. So he scrambled up to the top and reached over the edge to pull me up. Just as he grabbed my hand, my foot slipped off and he was able to hang on for just enough time to get my footing back and make it to the top. Probably wouldn't have killed me unless I landed really badly, but I would have definitely broken both legs and probably some other bones. If you're bouldering, try to stay under 10 feet and use a crash pad. Don't be stupid. I broke up with my boyfriend and he pulled out a gun. His intention was to shoot himself, but he wasn't exactly being careful and I was scared he'd turn the gun on me. His brother heard me yelling at him and called the police. I ran out of the house before they arrived. What the frick? Emotional people and guns, man. Summit of Mt. Baker at sunset. The glacier on top had melted and it felt like movie quicksand up there. I legitimately thought I'd sink and never be heard from again. I ended up wading through the melt and the ice started to harden after the sun set. Made it down and avoided all crevasses. This is why you should always start your climbs in the middle of the night, kiddos. Heart attack and liver failure when I was 20. Was genuinely pretty terrified about what might happen and how little control I seemed to have over my own body. When I was little, I was at Chuck E. Cheese for a birthday party. I got in the bull pit and somehow got stuck lying at the bottom. I remember a bunch of other little kids being on top of me and laughing. I couldn't breathe and I couldn't get out. Luckily some older kid saw what was going on and fished me out. I was so relieved that I bolted back to where the adults were, not even sure I thanked the kid who saved me. Wherever you are, mysterious stranger, thanks a lot. Your name is phenomenal. I almost got shot when walking my dog. I was outside and just enjoying the fresh air with my pup, and then out of sudden a pickup truck chasing two dudes on a motorcycle comes around the corner. Dude in the truck pulls out a gun and starts shooting in the middle of the residential area. My dog froze and wouldn't move, and I knew I had to get out of there, but I could let him alone, so we were on the floor. A window of an apartment building right behind me got hit by a bullet, so close to my head. Turns out the men on the motorcycle had tried to mug a dude in the parking lot of the supermarket, but then they found out that he was not a person you should make angry. One dude got a bullet in his butt and fell off the bike. The neighborhood cornered him and the police came and they took him away. My dog is still scared shitless when he hears loud sounds on the street. I was in the ER for pneumonia, and when I went in my O2 saturation was at 80%. Eventually, they diagnose it as pneumonia, hook up me to antibiotics and leave it to start working. However, my oxygen had been low for a long time, so I was weak from lack of oxygen and coughing. My vision was cloudy. My head was swimming and I was completely out of it, and then I went into anaphylactic shock. Luckily, I was already in the air, so they were able to treat that right away, but I laid there, hands and throat swelling, but unable to move or communicate the danger. I saw a pickup truck going the wrong way on the interstate. He was in my lane, perhaps 100 yards away. Our closing speed had to be at least 100 miles per hour. I did the world's fastest lane change and missed being killed by less than a second. I was driving a 1974 Honda Civic and that car handled great. In the split second when we crossed, time slowed. I clearly saw the other driver's face. He was an old man sitting hunched over the steering wheel. He needed a shave. I just kept driving, shaking with a death grip on my steering wheel. Same thing happened here, except he was in the left lane or I would be dead. I didn't think anything of the lights coming right at me until they drove right by my door. I was going to call 911, but about 30 seconds later I saw 3 sheriffs speeding after him. I was on that cruise ship that got caught in that hurricane strength storm at sea. When the boat was listing at 40 degrees, I was sure we would capsize. I started going through pictures on my phone reminiscing on my life, awaiting my death. Thankfully though, the storm passed and I'm alive. I was impaled in the upper leg in the back of a 10-acre pasture in the country. Barely missed whatever big artery is there. Longest run of my life back to the house, so I could be driven to the hospital. Thought for sure I'd bleed out in the back of that pasture. Working construction on a pitched second-story roof. I chainsaw through the roof sheeting, which is made of plywood. The sawdust starts cascading down the pitch of the roof, right under my feet. Things get slippery. I start to slide toward the edge, still on my feet. I'm surfing toward the edge now, whether I like it or not. I scramble for a better foothold, but nothing stops me from sliding. So here I am, holding a running chainsaw and slipping toward the edge of the roof with no idea what's underneath. As I approach the edge, I think I can't land on this chainsaw. As I reach the edge, I throw the chainsaw as far as I can, out into a field, then look down at the ground for the split second before I go over the edge. It's like everything is happening in slow motion. I see piles of wood, rebar, cinder blocks, and just your basic construction debris. I see a clear spot about 10 feet from the foundation. This is it. At this point, I'm going over, period. I make a controlled jump, aiming for the spot with no debris. 2 stories later, I hit the ground exactly in that spot, execute a perfect roll like I would if I took a spill on a skateboard, and I'm back on my feet, completely unhurt. The chainsaw is on the ground 20 feet away, still running. A guy runs up to me asking if I was okay. He saw it all happen. He's amazed. Tells others. They tell the superintendent. The super calls my boss, who makes me take the rest of the day off just in case. TLDR. Fell off a 2-story building with a running chainsaw. Executed somersault. Survived completely unscathed. THB, he thought he was in a movie scene. dude, I don't know exactly what the technology is now, but waiting to get results from a second HIV test 6 months after whatever encounter you had concerns about is just brutal. Waiting 2 weeks for the first one is bad enough. I recognize that HIV doesn't necessarily kill you anymore, but try convincing someone of that waiting to get their results. When I was around 16, I was dating a pretty cool guy. We had the same interests. He was a bit older. My parents liked him etc. Well, with time I learned he had a bit of a temper and learned what to avoid doing in order not to make him mad. Up to this point he never actually hit me or anything. Just shoves and pinches. Stuff like that. Actually still have a little scartle. Any normal person would have left by then, but my younger self really believed to look for the good in people and had terrible self-esteem. Anyways, one day I snuck out of my house at 2 AM. We were in the back of his truck making out and he tried to initiate sex. Me, being 16 and raised to be a guilty Catholic, said no. He gets pushy and I keep saying no. He gets mad and puts his hands around my neck and just starts squeezing. Now, I am a pretty chubby girl but he was much taller and bigger than me. I was having trouble shoving him off me and I am struggled to breathe and I am getting a weird feeling in my head. Sort of like feeling dizzy and feeling like my eyes are bulging out. The whole time I am thinking this is it, I should have left when I could. The whole time, we were parked in front of my neighbor's house. Neighbor must have thought it was sketchy and comes out. BFCs and turns on the truck and just drives around before he tells me to get out and I end up walking home at like 3 in the morning. Never told my family and they still ask about him from time to time even though it's been like 4 or 5 years. Scary crap. Report him. People like that just do it over and over again to different people. Got bronchitis but was too lazy to go to the doctor. My lungs were super inflamed and I was having a hard time breathing and was just uncomfortable. One time when I was home alone, I went into this coughing fit that just wouldn't stop. I coughed so much I threw up. Didn't even make it to the bathroom. Just on the garbage can in my living room. Then my breath got stuck. I don't know how to explain it, but whenever I tried to inhale, I just couldn't. It felt like the air just wasn't going down. I honestly felt like I was going to die that day on my living room floor. That was the wake-up call to go to the doctor. When I went there, the doctor told me my lungs were super inflamed and I had really bad asthma. It took a lot of inhalers and 2 rounds of antibiotic, steroid pills and steroid shot on my butt to finally feel better. Should have gone to the doctor right away. Was during a driving lesson. I was driving down a residential road and out of nowhere this guy in a small van just comes hurtling towards me at full speed, at least 10-20 miles per hour faster than the limit. His van is slightly on my side of the road so he is gonna hit me and he is clearly not paying any attention to the road. I could see his eyes were looking at somewhere around his radio, and I just froze. Thankfully my driving instructor reacted quickly and sounded the horn to get his attention and the guy swerved at the last second onto the pavement. Good thing there were no people there, and kept on going at the same speed down the road. The bastard. Looking back it was obvious I was not going to die, but when I was 4 or 5 or so my stepdad would hold a lit lighter eye close to my face in lieu of hitting me, and there were a few times I genuinely believed I was going to die. I used to live alone in a tiny apartment with only my cat for company. One day, I was gawping at the telly and scoffing strawberries at a ridiculous speed when suddenly I sucked one into my windpipe. I have absolutely no idea how long it was stuck for. Logic tells me it can't have been more than 30-40 seconds, but it's true what they say, everything slows down. I was panicking a lot but weirdly also very aware of what was happening and what I needed to do. It wasn't like when you almost crash your car and just think oh crap, but more like there are things I must try in order to not die. I guess that's your survival instinct. But I never expected it to be so lucid. Anyway, after much futile neck grabbing, air clawing and unsuccessful coughing retching, most of which your body does automatically, I just ran at my kitchen work surface. My apartment was long, thin and open plan, with a kitchenette at one end. My dad used to jokingly call my kitchen my cooking shelf, so I had a fairly decent run up and somehow it worked. To put it into perspective, I've never had any medical training, not so much as a first aid course. Even now, I couldn't point at my own body and tell you where you should apply pressure or with what force. If you had asked me on a normal day what I would do if I found myself alone and choking, I would have probably shrugged and made a joke. I have no freaking clue how the heck I managed to save my own life on that day. Pure luck, I suppose. I'd be really interested to know if anyone else has ever come this close to choking to death and if their experience was similar. Oh, and as for what happened instead, I ended up with the nastiest bruise across my upper abdomen and my throat ached for about 2 weeks. Once when I smoked spice. Don't do that. I lost my goddamn mind. My heart was racing like crazy, but I felt really cold and I couldn't tell if it was just actually cold where I was or if I had a low body temperature. I sort of leaned over and cried silently while waiting to die, having a panic attack while way too high on crap I knew nothing about. Eventually, I guess I came down enough to calm down and go to sleep. I woke up feeling depressed but okay. My whole body ached like a mother sucker. I couldn't breathe. I kept gasping trying to breathe. My hands were blue, and I was feeling really sleepy. My heart was pounding, fluttering in my chest. My vision started to go black and I went with it. Then they stabbed me with the EpiPen. I gasped and got a bit of air. I kept gasping and getting bits of air. My vision started to come back. I went to the hospital for observation, and that's how I almost died because of Bull's essential oils my co-worker diffused. Man, those kinds of people suck. Sinus barotrauma. For about 10 minutes I legitimately thought I was going to die. Happened on a plane. Out of nowhere I feel an excruciating pain on the inside and behind my eye socket. Felt like someone put an ice pick through my eye. A million possibilities went through my head. The most plausible that a blood vessel in my head exploded and I was going to die shortly via aneurysm. Thankfully the pain subsided and I googled the symptoms. Turns out my sinus was blocked at takeoff and there was a massive pressure imbalance on the inside of my sinus and the cabin of the plane. Basically the air in my head started to expand without being able to escape. Sinus barotrauma. I rate 0/10. Well, here's my tiffer that didn't happen today. The mechanical pencils my dad got me for school back in middle school came with these little plastic end caps on the erasers. They had tiny holes on the top that if you happened to blow through made a high-pitched whistling sound. Me being a dumb middle schooler kept making this thing whistle. My friend made me laugh while the thing was inside my mouth. So I inhaled it and the darn thing slipped past my vocal cords and fell all the way into one of my lungs. I was pretty sure my lung was going to collapse because of the immense pain I was in. My mom rushed me to the hospital and we luckily got it extracted. Swimming in the Gulf of Mexico, I was caught in a riptide. I said frick you Poseidon and kept swimming. I know you're supposed to swim parallel, but panic and adrenaline from thinking you're about to drown makes you not think straight. The only thing that went through my mind was just keep swimming. This isn't going to be the end of you. When I got to the beach I just freaking collapsed. Had I been out there like a minute or two longer I'm sure I would have been so tired I would have just given up. It took about half an hour for the 100-yard walk to the car. So I was deployed to Kabul on one of my deployments doing PSD. I was the TC, shotgun of the lead truck, which was just an armored Suburban. Kabul is mostly safe-ish most of the time as there is a massive ISA presence there. We were driving down the main road and an Afghan police convoy pulls in front of us. They are driving Toyota pickup trucks with DSHKs, the Russian contemporary of the .50 cal machine gun, mounted in the back. Their rear truck is about 20 feet in front of my truck. The Afghan gunner swings his DSHK around, points it right at me, and racks around into it. The bullets from those machine guns would cut through our truck like paper. I pretty much though I was about to get ripped to shreds without even being able to shoot back. The Afghan then just looks right at me, smiles and waves, then his convoy speeds off. I've been shot at a number of times, been near, thankfully poorly placed, IEDs, and other types of things, but at least in those cases I knew what was happening and could fight back. When someone points a machine gun that's capable of taking down aircraft at you from 20 feet away, there isn't crap you can do about it. It was just a prank, bro. Been held up at gunpoint before because I naively answered a door for someone. He wanted all my money, which to his disappointment was in the bank. because it was 2003 and I'm not a freaking pirate who keep gold hidden in a chest. Anyway, I came to terms with the fact I was going to die because he was getting more agitated and I could tell I was at the end of the line with him. Decided I had a good run and I'd go out fighting. So I grabbed his gun and tried fighting him off. He slammed me to the ground, got his gun back somehow, and pistol whipped me pretty good on the head. I managed to get away from him and run to the kitchen to grab a chef knife. He tried to shoot, but the gun jammed. At that point, he had a useless weapon and I had a foot-long intimidating looking knife. He ran out and I called the police and headed to the hospital to get stitches and staples across my head, which were luckily in my hairline so you can't see the scars. Even though I came to terms with dying, it was still pretty scary hearing the gun clicked. Anyway, it wasn't a big life-changing event. For a little bit I felt like I had a new perspective on life, but then I settled back into my same routine I had before. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.